The recording is being made in the auditorium of the Oklahoma Historical Society.
Society's Indian Heritage Committee. We want to welcome them this time whole morning. We'll get started with our program right away because we have a busy schedule to keep all good. The first person I'm going to introduce, Molly, are you ready?
I was trying to get down from the camera.
Okay. The first person I will introduce is Molly Griffith, who is owns 11 of Apache Publishing Company. And she has with her today Harold Keith, who incidentally is, you people may not know what this is, but he is the only Oklahoman ever to win the Newbery Prize. That means he's an excellent author. You know whose birthday this is today? One of our most famous Oklahomans, Will Rogers. And he has written a book on Will Rogers, and Molly has recredited him. So today we're going to hear just a little bit about Will Rogers from Molly, and she has a guest with her who will talk instead of Mr. Keith, but he will be in the room, and you will get to see him. So, Molly, will you take over today? Sure.
I'll wait and let those kids get in their seats. It's just a little chilly here today, but we're going to warm you up good. Everybody in? I love history, especially Oklahoma history. And when I taught school, and I taught kids just like you, just your age, even those that didn't like school, like Will Rogers didn't like school very much, came to like history by the time we got to the end of the year. Because I told them that history is not just dates and numbers, history is people. And today we're going to talk about one of those people that influenced early day Oklahoma. As our introduction lady said, this is Will Rogers' birthday. Now when I tell people that Will Rogers was born 10 years before the Oklahoma Land Run, they think for a minute and they know immediately that must have been 1879. Because there's not a kid in Oklahoma that doesn't know that the land run of Oklahoma took place in 1889. So when I say Will was born 10 years before the land run, you can subtract and you can get that gadget. As I say, dates are something you have to have in history, just like you have a tree and you have limbs of the tree that people can climb up on. Well, you have to have those dates so that you know when these things happened in relationship to when you were born. And 1889 was quite a ways before you were born, wasn't it? What are you? Most of y'all are about 10 years old, 4th grade, 5th grade? What grades are these kids in? Second grade. Oh, great. Great. The younger that I can get them, the better. That's good. I'm glad we've got second graders here. You all know who Will Rogers is. If you've ever gone to the National Capitol in Washington, D.C., there's a wonderful statue of him. And if you look at the statue on the toe, all of the toe is rubbed real bright coppery color. Because everybody that goes there knows if they rub the toe of Will Rogers, they'll get a sense of humor. You know what a sense of humor is? That's somebody that can laugh easy. Will Rogers made Oklahoma laugh, and then he made the whole nation laugh. I've got two people with you today that know a great deal about him. As Lucilia mentioned, I have Harold Keith, and Mr. Keith, you need to stand up so the kids can give you a round of applause. Here's Mr. Keith. The year after Will Rogers was killed in the tragic plane crash, they asked Mr. Keith to write a book about Will Rogers' boyhood. This book has been said to be the most definitive book ever written on Will Rogers because the man who is one of the most important people that ought to know, Will Rogers Jr., said so. This is what Will Rogers Jr. said about this book. He said, "My daddy would have loved this book because Mr. Keith found every person who was important in Dad's life and he wove their story into Dad's memories." See, in just a year after Will Rogers died, all the people that knew him were still around, still alive. His sister, all kinds of people who had been intimately involved with Will Rogers were still alive for Mr. Keith to interview. So this is why this particular book, and I bet your school library has it. I don't know where you're from, but most of the school libraries have been buying it a whole bunch lately. It was first published, as I say, way back then, 56 years ago, and it was let to go out of print and has been reprinted now, so you'll be seeing the brand new version. Now, along with Mr. Keith, I invited today a lady who is extremely special because she was the curator of the Will Rogers Museum for 17 years in Claremont. Her name is Rita Collins. She is Director Emeritus, and she's going to tell you a little bit today about Will Rogers, the Cherokee Kid.
Thank you. And I certainly add my appreciation to Mr. Keith. Okay, I'll lean forward. Did you hear me now? Mr. Keith wrote this book a long time ago, and it still is the only book that's written for youngsters to read and learn about Will Rogers. And then later on, I had Mr. Keith's son in my class when I taught at Central State, and became very well acquainted with Johnny Keith, who's doing sports information now in Texas. He's still in Texas doing this. Let's have a test first. If you have a test first, then you don't have to remember anything. Yeah, you will. What one thing do you know about Will Rogers? Somebody hold up a hand. What one thing do you know about Will Rogers? Anybody know one thing about Will Rogers? Okay.
Airplanes.
Airplanes, yes. We love airplanes. Okay, what else do we know about Will Rogers? Okay. He died in a plane crash, he certainly did. What else do we know about him? Okay. He was nice, yes. What else do we know? Okay.
He was a cowboy.
He was a cowboy, an Indian cowboy. George Nye, our former governor, likes to say Will Rogers was the only kid in town that could play cowboys and Indians all by himself. He was both a cowboy and an Indian, and very proud of being both of them. What else do we know about Will Rogers? He was a movie star. The last few years of his life, he was the most famous movie star. He made more money for his company than any other movie star. We think about him as being a cowboy actor, but by that time in his life, he was acting as, and one of them is a doctor, and one is a veterinarian, and one is a newspaper publisher, and one of them he played the part of a banker. So he was a movie star and did all of those things. He also was a radio commentator. Instead of being a TV entertainer, he had a program on the radio because we didn't have TV in those days, but I'm sure he would have been on it too. He's been called the greatest communicator that America has ever produced. Now, you know what a communicator is? Anybody know what a communicator is? Somebody that can talk, somebody that can write, somebody that can perform, someone who can talk between you and me, or between himself and crowds. The greatest communicator the nation has ever produced. And here he was, a little Indian cowboy from the Indian Territory in Oklahoma. Okay? He got named after
The parks are named after.
the parks. Okay. How can you? What else do you know that's named for Will Rogers? A park is named for Will Rogers. Airports, for Will Rogers. Who else?
My high school is named for him.
Your high school named for Will Rogers. That's right. What else do you know? Okay? Will Rogers Restaurant. We now have a Will Rogers Shopping Center in Oklahoma. There is a Will Rogers Rose, by the way, a big, beautiful, deep red rose named for Will Rogers. What else do you know? In Tulsa, there's a Will Rogers Methodist Church. There's a little bitty hand way back there. What?
A fair?
Will Rogers Fair.
The state fair was called the
Oh, yes,
in Tulsa.
the state fair in Tulsa this year, dedicated to him. Okay, what else is named for Will Rogers? Okay, swimming pool, okay. There are Will Rogers rodeos, there are Will Rogers polo clubs. Will Rogers' home that he lived in California is still there. The house in which Will Rogers was born is in Oologah, Oklahoma. Oologah, Oklahoma, in Cooey District. Anybody have any idea what Cooey meant? It was the name of the district where Will Rogers was born, the Cherokee Nation. If you hear the word Cooey, it's a white bird, white dove maybe, Bob probably knows this better than I do, but it was the nickname for John Ross, and they called it the white dove of peace. But if you kind of listen to a dove, you hear them say, cooey. And the street in Oologah, Oklahoma, now is called Cooey Avenue. So that's where Will Rogers was born. He wasn't born. Oklahoma was not yet a state when he was born. It was still Indian territory. Someone said one time, the most famous American of all wasn't born in a state, he didn't die in a state. He was born when we were still in Indian territory, and he died in Alaska while it was still the territory of Alaska. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Alaska. Do you know where Alaska is? Can you kind of visualize that on your map? Way up there. Well, at the very top of Alaska is a place called Barrow, or Point Barrow, you usually hear it called. And at that very point of Alaska, as far as you can get on the North American continent, that's where he was killed in a plane crash. And a few years I had an opportunity to go up there when we dedicated a new monument to show where the crash took place. And I gave the talk up there. The governor couldn't go, so I was officially there to give the talk about Will Rogers on the back of a truck. And it was cold that day. It had been freezing and snowing, and wind was blowing, and it was raining. And I looked out in front of me, and there was a sea of faces. And they looked like Indian children. These were Eskimos, and they do have a fine definition between Eskimos and Indians, but they look just like Indian children. They had their parkas on, like you see in the books about the Eskimos. Beautiful parkas. Some of them made with sealskin and very expensive, but you know what they were wearing under those parkas? Parkas are kind of coats like I have on, only they're real heavy and they have hoods on them and some fur on the bottom. But underneath those parkas, they were wearing blue jeans and Nikes, just like the rest of America does. But there was that sea of faces, and I thought, what do I tell these people? These are Eskimo people, a little bit suspect, maybe rather blank faces when I started talking to them. I thought, what can I tell them about Will Rogers? About why we're putting this monument here in his honor. And I thought, well, if Will Rogers had his way about where he chose to die, if he had any choice about where to die, it would have been in an airplane. He loved flying. He had no fear of flying. Wiley Post was the pilot. Any place Wiley would go, he was willing to go with him. So he was flying. He was in a new territory. He was exploring. He was learning something new. He always wanted to know something new about the world. And he was up there with these people whose faces were so much like his own people in Oklahoma, Cherokee people. These are his people. So when I started talking about those people, and I told them, if Will Rogers had had a choice, I think he probably would have chosen to die in a plane crash amongst his people. Even though it was the top of the world, this was an adventure. There are some other books that I hope you'll find in your library. Some of them may be a little bit over your head. I brought along a picture, in case you haven't seen a picture of Will Rogers. People in Hollywood found, tell me when I'm out of time, because I'll talk too much. People in Hollywood had a hard time believing that he was an Indian. Do any of you have Indian blood? Do your parents tell you that you're Indian? Good. See, we have a blonde-headed fellow back there. He's Indian. She has some dark hair. Someone else has blue eyes. Okay, we have a number of people here. So we think about Indians sometimes as looking like the Indians that you see in the movies. Will Rogers looked just like you do. He had hair that was rather light. He had eyes that were blue. He was very much a Cherokee, and yet he looked just like we do. So when he went to Hollywood and was in the movies and he told people that he was an Indian, they thought he was kidding. They really didn't believe he was an Indian. But he never missed a chance to tell them that he was an Indian. And this was a very important part of his life. And you'll find the story of this Indianhood in Mr. Keith's book, and talking about his parents, and talking about Indian territory, and talking about what it's like to be an Indian in Oklahoma. He said he had just enough white blood in him to make him a little bit suspect when he went to a school where they were all Indians. At first, in the Cherokee Nation, the schools were paid for by the Cherokees, and if you were white, you had to pay extra. It was only for the Indian children who could go free. And then later on, when they became a part of Oklahoma, of course, they went to schools just like we did. There are so many things I could tell you about him. I brought a couple of pictures, a couple of books along just to show you that they're available in case your teachers are interested in going to schools. This one is written by a Dr. Collins, who's not a relative of mine. My name is Collins without the G on the end. So I took his book a few years ago. It was a rather small book and kind of gray looking, and I put it together in a larger book, put a lot of pictures with it, some color with it, and some up-to-date things. And this too is available for libraries and tells a great deal about the ranch that he lived on, and more details. It's more of a grown-up book. A recent one that I did, and I'm not down here peddling books, honest, but this one is called Will Rogers Says. If you need books for gifts and so on, these are sayings of Will Rogers. These are the little things that he said in the newspapers. Yes. I'm sorry. Good, very good. You can learn about him, and there are pictures of him, and there are pictures of his family there. And then, because there is quite a bit of interest still on the crash in which Will Rogers was killed, I did a book a few years ago about the Will Rogers and Wiley Post in Alaska. The crash felt around the world. So this has the details on the crash. It has maps in it about where the plane went down. It has all the details that you might want to know about Will Rogers. You know, I think one of the things we might do to wind this up, can you carry it to me? No, I can't carry it to you. Don't you think we ought to sing happy birthday to Will Rogers? I can't. Can you carry it to him? I get them all started off on. Who can sing happy birthday to Will Rogers? I'm not being modest. I'm not modest at all. I just simply can't carry it to him. Can somebody help us?
One of the teachers?
Somebody start us off and we'll all sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Will Rogers. Happy birthday to you.
I think they all know it would be 112 years today. If he were still alive, he would be 112 years old. And I think it's important that most people don't realize it's that long. You know, they think it would have had to have been sooner.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we enjoyed that. Will Rogers was really known as the Cherokee ambassador to the world. So we felt, since today was his birthday, he would enjoy letting us say a little bit more about it, and I do thank the people for coming. Mr. Keith, would you stand up, please? This is Mr. Harold Keith, who wrote the book about Will Rogers.
Yeah. He's standing up twice. That's
Well,
all right.
good. And you might also, you sports fans might also like to know that Mr. Keith and Will Rogers have their pictures on the program for the Oklahoma-Colorado game. That didn't help Oklahoma much. Now then, I would like for the Deputy Director of the Oklahoma Historical Society to stand up. Dr. Bob Blackburn. Bob, would you stand up, please? Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Mr. John, John Sykes, and he is a Cherokee. I'm sorry, I got Cherokee on the brain. I just have to do a little Cherokee. Sorry about that. He is a Cheyenne historian, and he will come and direct you up to the 3rd floor, where we will continue our program. Thank you. You've been an excellent audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to just say a little bit about the type of research that I have done on my people, the Cheyenne. I had the opportunity to be raised around a lot of older people. My grandparents, so they had me for a number of years, and then I stayed with a great aunt. And I used to sit and listen to a lot of the old stories of the Cheyenne, and they didn't talk too plain in words of English, so I had to listen real close. So I learned to talk the Cheyenne language fast as to be able to communicate with them. And as I grew up, I started looking around, and they lived in many parts of the country. And a lot of the stories I would hear would be from Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Oklahoma. And it seems like from about 1875, I started hearing more stories about the state of Oklahoma. And around the turn of the century, it seemed like there was a change coming about. More schools were being talked about for the children. They went to school at different places. And I decided about 10 years ago that I would start to writing down the stories, documenting and so forth. But at that time period, I had lost a lot of the elders, so I went around and I talked to all the elders that I could. They were kind of, didn't want to talk at first because they weren't scared to talk to me. It's just that they didn't know which way it was going to go on all the old stories and so forth. So after about 2 years, I would go back and I would talk to them. So finally one by one, they decided, okay, I'll tell you some more stories. And it's amazing that they told a lot of stories about their childhood and growing up, how they roamed and lived on the plains. And I would ask them about the food sources that they had. Of course, you've all heard about the buffalo, which was their whole means of clothing, food, shelter, and so forth. So I started to write and document all of this, and then they would talk about their school days here in early Oklahoma, which was they had some amazing stories there. And I continued to do this, and they bring them up to their daily lives as they live today in the state of Oklahoma. And with all the hardships that they had encountered prior to statehood, they had great praise for the state of Oklahoma. And they talked very highly of the state as their home. And lot of them farmed prior to statehood and so forth, so I was honored when I was asked if I would be a part of this as a moderator, so I'm going to, at this time, I'm going to introduce the groups that you all will be going to, and I understand that Pauline Hayne is not going to be able to make it. She was a storyteller for Choctaw Creek. George Smith, I haven't seen him yet. I don't know if he made it. He's a Comanche, he's a painter, and he's a storyteller. And Mr. Jeff Wright, he will be taking care of the artifacts upstairs. And I would also like to thank Marianne Taggart. She's a volunteer that is going to be a part of this. Lloyd Lane, Robert A. Pettigo. And I'm going to be moving around with you guys upstairs and girls. And if you have any type of questions, feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. And at this time, if Jeff was like, pardon?
John might add that since Pauline cannot be with us, Lucilia is going to be telling some stories. So we'll still have 3 centers for artists upstairs. Lucilia will be handling some of the mini myths and legends section.
All right, did everybody hear him? Lucilia Wise will be handling storytelling upstairs for Lady Pauline Haynes since she can't be here today. And I'm going to be moving around from a group to group and talking to you a little bit about the Plains Indians. So then if you have anything to ask me about the Plains Indians, raise up your hand and we'll see what we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. When they grounded us, it was airplanes. So they grounded us, but I'll tell you what, I'll take a rain check on it. Anyway, that's why I got my name for rain. But I'm going to tell you some of these. I'm an artist. I'm supposed to be an artist. And these are some of my work. I'd like you all to get us to look at it after a while.
Right. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to.
And this is some of my work here. And I couldn't bring, that now I can't,
We have to move on. Another group is coming out.
oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you came.
Books about stories from different tribes of Indians, little short stories. The Indians did not have a written language for many years. And so the way they taught their children, actually, was by telling them stories. The stories always had a moral to them. They always had a reason to tell them. And they're supposed to learn a lesson from it. So, this book is full of myths and legends that the Indian people taught their children. Now, I am Lucilia Wise. I'm chairman of the Indian Heritage Committee of the Oklahoma Historical Society, which of course has put it on this demonstration. And I'm also chairman of the Indian Heritage Committee. That's what I volunteer to do. But professionally, I write and illustrate books and publish them. Now, I think I've done 16 from two teachers' guides up to now on Oklahoma and the cultures of Oklahoma. And with the State Department of Education, I did 3 books on 3 different freedmen. This one is your read book. And then there are 2 others that are on a higher read book. Now, the thing we want to do this morning is I'm going to tell you the story of a Kiowa legend. The Kiowas live out in the western part of the state. is about same day. We like to play tricks on everybody. So let's see on page 28, and I'll show you the painting so you can find it real easily. This is same day with his drum. Okay? Yes? 28. What I'm afraid not. I have to show it to the next class. Let's group the things in. And these are mine. They're what I call travelers. I take them with me to tell stories, and I pass them out so the children like you can see the pictures and listen. We won't take the time for you to read this. Sometimes I let the children read the stories. This morning we're going to act out the story, so we won't have time to read. I'll just give you a brief outline of the story. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now this character right here is same day, and he was hungry. He was real hungry. And he found a prairie dog town, because that's the way prairie dogs live in what we call town. Prairie dogs are real fast. You have out, let's see, where are your children from? Where is that? What town?
Oklahoma City.
What?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City? Okay.
State now, there's a private.
I see. Okay. Have any of you ever been out to the western part of the state? Say Lawton, Oklahoma? Anything like that? Well, did you see any prairie dog towns out there? Okay, there are prairie dog towns out in the western part of the state. So, same day he found his prairie dog town, but he knew he couldn't catch his prairie dogs because they're so fast. And they have a lookout. One of their members stands up top and warns the group when anybody is coming or when one of their enemies is coming. So you know what they do when they hear this warning sound? They dive in the hole real fast. So same day knew he couldn't catch the prairie dogs if he did play a trick. So what he did was get out his drum, and this is a real Indian drum. Made by Indians in Oklahoma. This is real weather. So same day got out his drum, and he started to play it like this. He saw all of the windows looking in. So he said, "Come on in, my friend. Come on in." So they came in. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story. We're going to get to back to back. Okay, who wants to be same day and play the drum? Everybody else? Okay, come over here. We'll start with you. Okay. Now, here we go. I get out of it. We'll do this. Here we go. Put it on your right hand. I'm sorry. Let's do it on the left hand and hold this in your right. Okay? Then you hit it one time. Hit it one time, and then you hit it 3 times. Okay? 1, 2, 3. 1. And start over again. 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now then. Okay, the prairie dogs are all looking in. So you're going to say, "Come on in, my friends." Okay. You all get up. All of you get up. Come up here and make a semicircle. Make a semicircle for me. All right. Now we need somebody to play the wolf. Who wants to be the wolf? Okay, you play the wolf. Now, you go back over here and stand and just watch for a little while, and I'll tell you what to do. All right? Okay. All right, now then, your prairie dogs are inside, so you're going to look at them and say, "Would you like to learn the rabbit dance?"
Who likes to run the rabbit?
And they nod their heads and say, "Yes." Okay, you say, "Shut your eyes real tight. Put your 2 fingers next to your ears you share my food? Will you share your food? I haven't eaten for days. You're kind of selfish. So you look at the world and you say, no, go get your own food. Well, I said, go to work, so you have to think something out. So you look at St. Louis, and you know he's kind of cocky. So you look at him and say, well, I tell you, we'll run a race. Say, we'll run a race. No, she says it to you. The wolf says it to you. We'll run a race. And the winner gets the food. So you look at old St. The wolf, and you're all bandaged up. He's all bandaged up. Okay. And so you say, all right, I'll do it. And the wolf says, we'll run around Rainy Mountain. There is a mountain out in West Oklahoma called Rainy Mountain. So, okay. You say to say it. When I say go, you say this again. When I say go, we'll run around Rainy Mountain. Okay, you put your gun there and you say, okay, I'll do it. You put your gun there. And you get over here, right here. All right, now, you're going to tear out real fast, and the wolf is going to limp like he really is crippled. And you run around the corner. You know what the wolf does? He comes back and eats up all the prey dogs.